Hi, I'm Casey Fry, and with me today to discuss sports nutrition is Flavia Liebel. Flavia is a registered dietitian of over 11 years with her own practice called Therapeutic Nutrition. So welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so my first question is, as a registered dietitian, one of your areas of expertise is sports nutrition. So can you tell us what is your role in working with athletes?
The most important role I have when I work with an athlete is to make sure they have scientifically accurate nutrition information that will help improve their performance. I want to also make sure that the way they are eating and how they're exercising doesn't compromise their health. And I'll do this by not just making sure they have the correct nutrition information, but also coordinating with the coaches, the strength and conditioning coaches, the trainers, team physicians, whatever members of the overall coaching staff that I can, to make sure we're all on the same page, that an athlete's healthy as well as performing at their top abilities.
So can you tell us, why is it so important for any athlete, be it a child in Little League, a high school athlete, or a collegiate athlete, to eat properly per the demands of their sport?
Absolutely. Nutrition is not one size fits all, and this is especially true with sports nutrition. We have three main types of sports. We have strength and power, we have endurance, and team sports. And each has very different energy and nutrient needs. So it's very important that you work with a dietitian to help you figure out exactly what you need for your type of sport. And even more important than being sports specific is being age appropriate. And this is really critical when you work with high school and middle age athletes, because they're still growing and developing. So we wouldn't want anything we do from a nutrition standpoint to have a negative impact on their overall growth and development.
So what are some of the dangers of not eating properly and of paying attention to good nutrition?
I feel like every team would benefit from consulting with a sports dietitian, because this is truly what sets athletes apart. So they all work hard, they all train at their sport, but what makes them different is how they survive for the last 10 seconds or the last 2 minutes of their game. And this is what happens when they're well hydrated and well fed. So if you're not properly hydrated, you are not going to build muscle as easily. You're not going to be able to get as much out of your training and practices. You're not going to recover easily from your training and practices. You're also more likely to get injured. So, really having it figured out in terms of exactly what you need to excel, I think would benefit every athlete and every team.
Okay, so when working with a team, what are some of the things that you are assessing, and how do you then go about working with each member of the team?
When I work with a team, I first want to assess what their overall knowledge is. Do they really truly understand how many calories they need? Do they understand how those calories should be broken down into their macronutrients, their carb, protein, and fat balance? So I wanted to see, do they know this information, or do they need me to help them calculate and figure this stuff out? I also then want to assess just what kind of practice schedule they have, and how does that fit around their class schedule, so that I can understand those challenges. I need to know the frequency, the duration, and the intensity of their practices. Again, this will impact how they feed themselves. And then I want to understand, what it's like when they are on the road. How often are they traveling? Do they travel, once a week? Do they have multiple games or tournaments in a weekend? So I really have to understand that individual team's needs, and then how do we take the pieces of that team, the players, and make them each as strong as they possibly can be. So I will usually work with them individually as needed. Some need to bulk up, some need to lean down. So once I've assessed kind of where some of the weaknesses are within the team or the individual players, I then address them very individually and specifically, making them a stronger player and making the team better overall as a whole team.
Mm-hmm. So why is it so important for athletes to work with a dietitian with a special expertise in sports nutrition?
The field of dietetics is enormous, and it's growing every day. So we as dietitians have to pick an area to specialize in. We can't be experts in every area. There's just too much. So it's really important to make sure they find a dietitian who has experience and expertise working with athletes. Once we specialize, we then stay abreast of the most recent and relevant information, so that we are the ones in the background doing the research to find out what cutting edge information has come out about protein or carbohydrates. And then we can translate that to our clients, the athletes, in a way that makes sense to them, and they can apply it to their everyday practices and games or competitions.
Mm-hmm. Wait, what's the next
Injury,
question?
I think.
Yeah, wait. Traveling. It's traveling. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, Bob. It's her, not me, Bob.
It's true. Okay. So I can say firsthand that athletes spend a lot of time on the road traveling, especially high school and collegiate athletes. So can you tell us, what are some of the challenges they face in getting proper nutrition while on the road so much and traveling?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is just not really knowing exactly where they're going to be eating necessarily, so they are faced with very unfamiliar foods. A lot of athletes tend to be superstitious, so they have certain rituals, so that could be a challenge. But more from a body standpoint, the GI tract isn't maybe used to different types of foods. And even more important is the timing. A lot of what we do with athletes is the pre-event and the post-event nutrition is so critical to their performance. Well, if they're traveling and they're on a bus or a plane or driving, it's hard to get the timing right. So when they travel, it takes just extra effort and really working closely with the team dietitian to figure out, okay, when should I be eating and what should I be eating? They also have to be really careful to never try anything new in terms of like food or fluid or anything before they compete. You want to make sure that you always try things out before practice. So they want to bring familiar foods and familiar beverages with them so they don't have to worry about having any of those side effects.
That's really interesting. So, does an injury change the dynamics of the regimen that an athlete follows as opposed to when they are well and able to play their sport?
It absolutely does, but it will vary depending on the athlete and the injury. What most people think is that they will need to significantly decrease their calories. And this isn't usually as drastic as an athlete may think, because we still need a lot of calories to repair whatever the injury is. Plus, just being, an active person, they're going to burn a lot of calories anyway. So I think one thing I would caution athletes is be careful not to decrease your caloric intake too much. Again, work closely with a dietitian to figure out exactly how you need to tweak your needs. We also want to put a special emphasis, obviously, on protein because that helps our muscles grow and repair. So we really want to make sure they're getting the right amount of protein, again, spread throughout the day. Their timing is really critical with a lot of pieces of sports nutrition. So yes, we want to look at what their individual needs are based on their injury and the sport and how quickly we hope they can get back to it.
Mm-hmm. So my final question is for the average weekend warrior. What are some basic guidelines for playing their sport in terms of proper nutrition?
I like to think of the weekend warriors as the college athletes that aren't college athletes anymore. Those of us that got to play when we were younger, but now really don't have time till the weekend. And I think the one piece of advice I would give them is to realize that nutrition is a 7-day-a-week thing. That it really, if you want to be able to go out and ride your bike for 25 miles or run for 15 miles on the weekend, you have to pay attention to how you're eating all week, as well as how well you hydrate. Hydration is such a critical piece of this, and so many people, whether they're athletes or not, are really mildly to severely dehydrated, and that'll affect how they feel. The other thing I see people do is skip meals. They'll skip until they'll like save up and eat a big meal after they go for that long bike ride. And they wonder why it's kind of torturous or just exhausting and they feel defeated and frustrated because they don't feel well while they're playing the sport or they're, doing this wonderful fun thing outside. It's because they didn't put any fuel in the machine before they got on the bike or they tied their shoes and went for the run. So they really have to fuel their bodies before they ask their body to do these tasks, especially when they're only doing them on the weekend. And then they want to make sure that they do kind of recover quickly with, again, fluid and foods after their workout. So it's really important that they pay attention to how they eat all week and not just on the weekends when they want to go out and play.
Absolutely. So thank you for being here with us today. We've certainly learned a lot about sports nutrition.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.